everybody, and welcome to another episode of And Just Like That, We Found Therapy. I am so happy we have our first repeat on the show. We have Vana Koutsomitis. How are you, Vana?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Vana, for those of you who haven't heard the pilot yet, is a dating expert and also matchmaker based out of New York, but she is now also splitting her time in Europe.
Yep, that's me.
So this is perfect because I always love Vanna's point of view as a hardcore New Yorker and the matchmaking expertise and dating tips. Anything else that you want to add on to that, Vanna?
Nope, I think that's perfect. I'm
Awesome.
a matchmaker by day and a great coach friend at night, right? That's
Yeah,
at the end of the
yeah,
day what I
24/7.
focus on.
As I
Yeah.
said on the pilot, Vanna got assigned as my buddy at the first investment bank I worked in London, and she hasn't graduated from like training me through life.
Aw,
But today we are here to discuss season 2, episode 5 of Sex and the City, which is For Women at a Funeral. And
I'm
in
excited. I'm a little nervous because I feel like this is a very heavy, charged episode, you
yes,
know?
it's such a good one. Like finally heavy drama. But in this episode, we open up with the death of one of Carrie's friends, Javier. He's a fashion designer who apparently passed away because of heroin. And the girls are attending the funeral. So Carrie is going in her little black dress. Samantha walks in a Javier design because apparently that's what you should wear to a designer's funeral, not black. And Charlotte is Carrie's date to the funeral. And in this funeral, I love it because it's supposed to be a sad event, but everyone's wearing the designer's clothes, as Samantha rightly guessed. And the sister of the designer comes to say some words, and she's saying, like, the girls are commenting on how good that woman looked because she wasn't gorgeous a week before. And death became her, and suddenly she's Donatella Versace, and this woman is basically calling for people to help with the Javier Foundation to find people who suffer from addiction. Cue in to one of the storylines that is Samantha saying, like, I'm going to help them raise money to get all the unlisted 212 numbers in New York. And cue to another storyline, which is Charlotte grabbing Samantha's hat just to not feel so out of place because she was also dressed in black. Her hat flies over to the tombstone of a woman, and Charlotte meets this man named Ted or Ned or something boring like that. And she was like, oh my God, I am so sorry. And the man says, don't worry, it's actually quite appropriate because she used to love hats. And Charlotte is like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Was she your sister? Because she checks the dates of the tombstone. And it was a young woman. And he was like, no, she was my wife. And she was like, oh, any kids? And he's like, nope. And then the girls are in the car, and Charlotte basically tells them, I'm going out for a drink with them. How do we feel about Charlotte picking up a man in the middle of a funeral?
Yeah, I'm not totally against it. I think that nowadays, like, we just are in like a different era, right? I mean, obviously, this was filmed so long ago. So if we're speaking about the context of then, maybe it was a little bit more cringe. But now, with like, dating apps are so hard and difficult and toxic. Like, maybe a funeral is better than a dating app,
1000%. I know where my vote
right?
is going. But I find it hilarious that they're in the car and Samantha's like, babe, like, why would you want to date a widower? Then you're going to jump into, somebody's shoes who you're never going to be able to fill because she's dead. And no matter how much of a bitch she was in the real world, you'll never live up to her expectations because she's dead. And Charlotte is the eternal optimist, is like, well, he got married, which shows that he can commit, and he's been through this, which shows he's gonna have like a range of emotions and feelings that he's gone through. Do you agree with that statement of Charlotte?
Well, I think that it's sort of like when you speak to matchmakers, a lot of the times they tell you that it's often easier to set someone up who's divorced than it is to set someone up who's been single for a really long time. And the reason for that is that the divorced person is more likely to have compromised a lot. And, sometimes people think that if you've been single for 10 plus years, maybe you've kind of gotten too set in your ways. But I actually don't really believe in that. I actually believe that it's not so black and white. And if you ask me my opinion, I would just say that dating a widower is just all about emotional maturity, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be able to, if you're emotionally mature enough to do it, I think it can be a very beautiful relationship because you'll basically have to make peace with the fact that you're entering someone else's story, and what makes them who they are today is that past story. So it's almost about like embracing the ex and loving the ex and loving, or not ex, right? The person who passed, and being able to like love that person for what they made your current partner. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So it's just about like trusting that that person was a good impact and made a good influence on the person that you're dating. And if you can keep that mentality, it's a very positive experience. But if you start getting jealous and if you start thinking, oh, I'm not living up to the expectations, then it'll end up to be a really toxic relationship. Don't you
Yeah.
agree? It's
I
just all about
agree.
like loving
Just
someone with their whole story.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I just did a bit of investigation for this episode. I was trying to see if the date on the newspaper where Javier's death was announced was available, and then the tombstone on when this woman died. Basically, I think this woman had been dead for like a year.
Okay.
And that was when I was like, oh, is it too soon?
Mm,
Because at the end of the day, even if they had just broken up, gotten divorced, separated, whatever you want to call it, I think you always need to grieve a partner that's no longer. So it is a grieving process. But how do you feel as a dating expert slash matchmaker to maybe grieve such an important commitment like a marriage can be within a year? Do you think that is a case by case basis? Do you think that it might be too soon?
no, I just think it depends on the man. I think it depends on the person because, like, grief isn't linear. Grief isn't just black and white. Like, people deal with grief in different ways. And I think the more important question is, like, can you ask yourself, does this feel too soon? Like, is he showing up and is he present with me? You'll know in your gut if the guy is ready for someone new.
Yeah.
I think it's really a case by case basis. I
Yeah.
don't think we can generalize when it comes to this,
Okay, so we're
right?
giving him the benefit of the doubt. He might be over it.
Yeah. I think he might be over it. And I think more importantly, he might have been able to weave that experience into the person he is today. It's kind of like what I was saying before. It's like he, if he has the ability to completely come to peace and feel at peace with that death, then he'll be able to be fully present with you. But
Yeah.
there will be some signs that he's not over the person if you feel like there's a sort of like spirit or ghost in the middle of your relationship. I think
Yeah.
that's the thing I would look out for is
Yes.
if he's always talking about her, if he's always
Yes.
mentioning little anecdotes or stories about their time together, then it might be a sign that he's not ready yet.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah. This is very useful for how it develops. So after that, Carrie is back in her apartment and she's going through, the fragility and brevity of life. She was like, oh my God, like we don't know how long we're here. I haven't still been to Greece. I haven't finished painting my bathroom. My Visa card balance is like still not completely settled. Um, and I'm following that chain of thoughts with her, and she's like, picks up the phone and dials Mr. Big's number. And basically,
Okay. So this is like it's something I've grappled with in the past, right? I've grappled with this idea of like, am I going to end up alone? Like if I'm single for too long, does that actually, is that like a premonition for the future? But I think that the most important thing is that Carrie didn't want big 6 months ago.
yeah,
So what makes her like her crisis, her mental crisis is what's making her go back to him. And I understand that like life feels short, whatever. We don't always like know what's coming next. But I wish that she could remind herself that that wasn't the right relationship for her. And this is what Carrie constantly does, is she constantly goes back into the toxicity thinking that it's going to change and get better. But let me tell you, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. It's not going to be different. Like a 40-year-old man isn't going to suddenly change the way he acts.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Especially that, like, again, nothing has changed. And like, there was a part of me that was like, girl, at least wait for him to come back. And then you might be in a position to be like, what's new? What is new? What are you bringing new to the table? What's going to bring me to the table right now? Because it wasn't working for me 6 months ago.
That's the point.
So
What
to
is going to be different now?
so to all the girls that might be thinking about texting their ex, what would you say?
So this is a very interesting time to ask that question because I'm really into astrology, and the planet of love, which is
Yeah.
Venus, is in retrograde right now, which means it's going backwards. Okay. So what does it mean? It means that this period from about mid-March to about mid-April, actually it's April 12th to be exact, we are kind of reevaluating what love means to us. So, as a collective. And what that means is a lot of us are getting back in touch with exes, and we're thinking about past relationships. And my advice is always to wait until these retrogrades are over to make any decisions. So, like, if you're thinking about texting your ex, like, just wait till April 12th. Like, please
Yeah.
do not do before. And maybe you'll have some increased clarity then. But I read this book. I think it was Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, which, by the way, is like a classic. And or actually, no, it was a different one. It was another classic, which is it's called A Breakup Because It's Broken. Okay.
Right.
And I really love that concept because I think a lot of us have rose colored glasses. And that's the beautiful part about humans, right? We don't always have the best memories. And that's a survival instinct. We don't always want to remember all the bad stuff. But what I think is really important is that, like, you're probably not remembering like all the really bad things that happened with your ex. You're probably not remembering like why you broke up. So take a moment, meditate, 30 minutes with no phone, and then I want you to journal. Why do you want to get back to this person? Why do you want to get back in touch with them? And what would need to be different for you to re-engage? That's the key question. What would need to be different for you to re-engage? Because it's possible. People do mature, people change. Like, there is an evolution in life of humanity, but remember that you cannot go back to that same setup because it wasn't working for you before. So if that person's willing to change and alter their behavior, maybe. But I really want everyone to be extremely cautious when they're getting back with an ex.
Okay, I love it. I think there's probably half of the listeners here that need to hear that. So they make a plan to have dinner on a Saturday, and in the meantime, we explore the other two storylines or three storylines. That is Samantha going around Manhattan asking for donations for the Javier Foundation, and she comes across these Bear Stearns. I don't know if he's like a partner, chairman, basically somebody super wealthy. And he hits on her, and Samantha, being who she is and having done the episode where she said that anything short of sex is available for you to get what you want, she lets him kiss her, and his wife walks into them or in on them. What do you think about Samantha always putting herself in a situation where it's like so sticky? Like, this man is married, you're in his house, this is your professional reputation, and you're a business owner.
I mean, this is classic Samantha, right? She just makes these like really impulsive decisions and sometimes isn't really thinking about the repercussions.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm pretty strict when it comes to this type of thing. Like, married men are off limits.
Yeah.
Punto. Period. Married men are off limits. Like, this is
We know it's
like
serious
we don't
when
even need to keep
Candy's
talking
serious.
about it. Like,
Yeah.
but I think that this is like peak Samantha, right? Because it's all about power. She always wants to maintain the power, and she uses that charm to get what she wants, but sometimes it backfires. And I just think that for Samantha, like, the advice for her would be like, check yourself. You know, why do you need that power, and what part of you needs to engage in that type of behavior? Like, why do
Yeah.
you need to hurt other people, right? Like, I think sometimes Samantha uses that seduction as currency, and she doesn't really realize that there's a cost to her behavior, right?
Yeah. No, she's very Machiavellian with her ways.
I don't know. I just think that this whole episode is just all about timing, right? So like if we want to look at Samantha's behavior, or if we want to think about Carrie's impulse to text big, if we want to think about all the different little nuances, like Javier's death at the funeral, this whole episode really, like the theme of it is this like meditation on timing, like what's too soon, what's too late, what's too much, what's not enough, right? So like Carrie, is she going to end up alone? Did she break up with Big too soon? Like Javier, did he die too soon? Like Samantha, like would she have kissed that guy if he wasn't married? What it's all around timing. And the question is, who are you reaching for and why? Not when. I think
Right.
our timing pressure is what causes a lot of mistakes. It caused a lot of mistakes for me. Me feeling pressure to settle down faster or do things quicker usually backfired. So I would encourage you to think about who and why, not when.
Right.
When doesn't help you. It's who and why. Those are the two questions you should really be asking yourself.
I love that. Okay. The other storyline is Charlotte exploring things with Ned. They go out for a drink and, they're saying like it's been lovely and next time we should grab proper dinner. And then the guy opens his wallet to pay for the drinks. And I think it just like flops onto the little pouch where he keeps pictures. So Charlotte's like, oh my God, is that her? She's so beautiful. And he's like, yeah, that's her. And then he gets a bit upset and starts crying. And in the voiceover, Carrie says, in a different setting, a man crying would have completely put off Charlotte, but because of him being emotionally mature, available, whatever you want to call it, it drew her even more in. And the guy is saying, like, I'm sorry, it's just weird for me to talk about her in a date. And Charlotte says, that's fine. Take all the time you need, which was basically 45 minutes. And then Charlotte apparently brings Ned back to life twice. So what do you think is obviously seeing it from the, watcher's perspective, it looks like he's put that on and he's playing this little act that he might put on because it gets women? Am I too cynical? Like, have you seen this happen in the real world?
I think this is a very 90s, early 2000s type of theme that we're seeing that we wouldn't see in a modern day TV show because this is not our current problem, in my opinion. Our current problem is actually emotional unavailability,
Yes.
right? Our current problem is that, in my opinion, men are encouraged to connect less, not more. So I don't usually see this sort of emotional manipulation as much. Because at the end of the day, what you're describing really is an emotional manipulation. If he's using his, death of his ex to basically try to lure in new women, that is like dark, dark. That is like really bad,
Yeah.
right? And that's emotional manipulation. But potentially it's better than what we're seeing nowadays in the dating world, which is just like a complete cutoff from emotional connection and a complete like sterilization of the way that people actually interact, right? If I think about the guys that I've dated, I can't tell you that most of them were super emotionally vulnerable and available. I can tell you the majority of them were very emotionally distant and it was hard to crack them. So I personally don't see this as a big problem nowadays. But
Yeah.
if that is the case, if that's what he was doing, he needs
Run.
therapy, right?
Okay. And then the other storyline is Miranda buying her first apartment in New York. And even when the real estate agent is showing her the apartment around, she's like, oh, so who else is buying the property with you? And she's like, no, it's just me. It's like, oh, maybe once you buy the place, your boyfriend will move in. It's like, no, it's just me. And they keep walking around this apartment. And I'm like, where are they? Because I've lived in New York and like so many steps. So it is a big apartment. And the woman is like,
They're in
but so
Brooklyn, I think, right?
that's later. Like, no, this is Upper East Side, I
Oh,
feel. So
oh,
Miranda's like
okay.
really earning big bucks at her law firm. She's just like, listen,
Okay.
woman, I have a lot of shoes. It's just me. I'll
Okay.
take it. And we basically find out that the person living in that apartment before her was Ruthie, and she was probably old, and she died in that apartment. And it took people to realize that she was dead like a week. So when they broke into the house, the cat had eaten half of her face. And that's Miranda's storyline for this episode, that she is eating takeout Chinese, chokes on a piece of something, almost dies, and calls Carrie being like, hey, I almost just died, and that will probably be what happens to me because everybody keeps asking me if I'm alone because I am buying this apartment by myself and I almost just choked, and my cat will probably eat my face when I die.
I
So,
mean,
isn't it
it's a
sad?
real fear.
Yeah, but isn't it sad that this woman is so kick-ass that in her mid-30s, she's buying an amazing apartment in one of the best, if not the best, neighborhood of Manhattan. And this is the struggle that she's facing.
I know. Well, at the end of the day, she is embodying this sort of next gen woman, right? The woman who
Yeah.
works. And if we look at our society and how it's evolved, this is a pretty recent change, right? We've seen women enter the workforce at alarming rates, amazing rates. Like it's great to see, women are working, men are working, and now that we're in a more equal society. But obviously 100 years ago that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
So even 60 years ago that wasn't the case. So I think, I mean, 60 years ago it was more the case, but it was still like revolutionary and different. So I think what this is really showing us is like how single women have been pressured to be coupled. And my question when I hear this is, why is there so much pressure for that financially successful woman to have a partner? And what is the time pressure? Again, it's that same feeling of like, she's buying this apartment today, right? Who knows what's going to happen next week? She could
Yeah.
meet someone and they could move in with her, whatever. But why does this real estate agent care so much?
Yeah.
Why is the story even told to her about Ruthie, who passed in the apartment, whose face was eaten by a cat? Like, obviously, there's something there. There was a reason that story was told to her. And I think it's just super disempowering. There's been a huge shift, and women can be the breadwinner. The
Yeah.
man can take care of the child. This is
But
not,
can
you know?
I'm going to interrupt you because I
Yeah.
love that Miranda's talking to the girls about this. And she's like, you will not believe how many people are like, just you. Like the down payment is coming from your father, right? And he's like, no, it's just me. And she says, if I were a man, I wouldn't have to face all these questions. And Charlotte
Mm,
says, the thing is that women don't want a woman that can do it all because it shows that you don't need a man. And Samantha, and she says, that's why I'm still renting, because like I know that the man that I'm gonna marry will want me to need him to provide the home. And Samantha says, who ordered a Victorian? I do think there's some people that still think this way, like, oh, I'm not gonna make this financial commitment or take the responsibility over my housing situation. And we know that rents in New York, London, where we live, are just skyrocketing until I
yeah.
get married. Because, maybe the man will set that up for me. What do you think about that? Do you think that that's still prevalent in this day and age, or do you think that it's changing?
Well, I can say that it's something that crossed my mind in the past. There's this feeling as a woman of wanting to be um
Rescued?
dependent in, yeah. I wanted in the past, I actually ended up buying my own apartment, but when I was buying the apartment, I was actually grappling with this question of like, you know we've been sold this idea that like certain milestones are reserved for partnership, right? So like buying a house together is a part of that happily ever after, right? Like he proposes, we get married, then he buys the home or we buy the home together.
Yes.
But here's the problem. Okay. Tying your financial growth to someone else's timeline is the fastest way that you lose power. right? So like if you can
Yeah.
afford it and you're holding off just in case a man might do it for you someday, you're outsourcing your future to someone who hasn't shown up yet. Like, why delay that freedom? So
1,000%.
like,
From
yeah, I
the
don't.
men in your clients, though, do you think that there's some truth to that? That maybe a man that sees that a woman has already purchased her flat and like is financially independent and does not need him, do you think that there's some truth that they might not be as, eager to be with them, be the rescuer? Because there
Well,
is a part of the man that wants to be the rescuer.
well, I think this is again, it's not binary, it's not black and white, but from my experience, matchmaking, I can say that men, especially really high performing ones, they are, if they're emotionally evolved, right? If they're secure and growth oriented, they're actually turned on by a woman who's already financially independent because it shows them that she's confident, she's deep, and that she's partnership potential, right? But of course, there are men who feel threatened, of
Yeah.
course. And it's not just about the money, it's about what the money represents. It represents power. And if a man is insecure, then her financial independence will take away his power. But I personally think that you should lean towards that autonomy and see which man comes towards you because that man is bound to be much more emotionally robust
Yeah.
and mature, right? Because you don't want a man whose self-worth is tied to being in control.
Yes.
You don't want that. That's a recipe for disaster, right?
Yes.
What do you
Okay.
think?
No,
Do you agree?
I completely agree, but I'm loving the way that you're kind of like packaging the answers for this.
Yeah, just like I think that it's not really the money, right? It's the mirror. So a woman who's built her own life is actually a mirror to a man. So she's reflecting back to the man any work that he may still need to do.
Yeah.
Because the right man is going to be happy to build with you. So like you've already built something and he'll be happy to build together. But the wrong man will see it as a threat.
Yeah.
So if anything, this will just repel the wrong man. Buy your own place, be financially independent, do your thing.
I agree. Okay. Um, so next is Carrie going out with Mr. Big. They're out at a dinner. Carrie looks amazing. Like there is something about the chemistry between these two characters that you can just see. I don't know if they put a special love into her hair and makeup. She is glowing. And they're having a very flirty conversation about death and heaven and what happens after life. And Mr. Big is saying that to him, heaven is a bed. And like, he's just putting in some innuendos there that like he's like hitting on her. And Carrie says, I'm not going to sleep with you tonight. And he's like, oh, is that right? And then they end up back at his place. And in the last minute, Carrie's voiceover says, like, I was feeling so excited and like alive again, but like suddenly it felt so wrong. And she runs away and says that, she gets scared. Like reviving this relationships after 6 months suddenly seemed like a very wrong idea. I guess in the 90s, it was even more real to have this image of women who are, I think in Spain, they call them microwaves. They heat up, but they don't cook anything. Like she was a tease and like she took it way too far. And then she said no, which now that conversation has evolved to like no means no. And you can say it at any
Mhm.
point and consent and whatnot. But I'm curious to know what you think of how she played her cards of like giving him a call, setting up that dinner, not being able to resist that chemistry, going back to his place and then pulling off her tracks at the last minute to protect herself and running away.
Well, are you asking if I think she did the right thing?
Yes.
I mean, I personally think she's perfect. Like, she's human. We're all
Yeah.
human. We want to dabble back in sometimes to rediscover someone. We want to go back into our old love stories, and that's okay. And that's healthy. That's human. So I don't see it as teasing. I see it as Carrie is testing the waters of her own healing. Okay. So Carrie, in my opinion, just wanted to see if she could be around Big without falling back into the same pattern. And when it felt too familiar too fast, she listened to her intuition and she freaking ran. Right.
Yeah.
And I think when you mentioned that she was so glowing, it's because she was hopeful, right? She was hopeful that this could go differently. It's kind of like what I just said before. It's like, what would you need to be different for you to get back with your ex? She needed to not get into bed with him to believe in this relationship again. But when she realized that they were just back in the same place, back in the little sexual innuendo, she was able to hear the alarm bells ring and say, shoot, I know this road. This broke me last time.
Yeah.
So instead of repeating the cycle, she did the bravest thing you could ever do, which is leave. That's what I believe.
I love it.
That's a sign of bravery.
Yeah. Okay. So then the episode kind of wraps, and Charlotte gets invited to a memorial for Ned's wife, and she discovers that he's invited like another two women, and she's like, oh, are those your sisters? He's like, oh, I don't have any sisters. And like she kind of like breaks the bouquet of lilies on him because she gets that like she was not the only one bringing him back to life. Then Samantha gets finally reinstated to not being a social pariah through working in the Javier house with Leonardo DiCaprio. Miranda faces her fears of potentially dying alone by replying to an email to her lawyer saying like, sorry, I am not separated. That was drafted wrong in the papers for me to buy my flat. I am single. And like she cheers to it in her new apartment. And Carrie screens through 4 calls from Mr. Big. Mr. Big shows up at her place and he's like, good, you're alive. And they end up going to a bowling alley because Carrie's like, no, come on, let's go out. And she tries to take him to the least sexual place. And then they have this conversation where Mr. Big has won the first game and Carrie's like, oh, let's play another game. Best 2 out of 3. And Mr. Big is like, oh, are you sure you want to go over this one other time and get killed again? And Carrie's saying like, I didn't know what we were talking about anymore, but I knew what my answer was. And she says, yes, they end up sleeping together. Now we get to the last bit of the episode where I'm going to ask you, as a dating expert and matchmaker, what would your advice to the girls be? So what would you tell Carrie, who finally does cross that line and goes back to having sex with him? But she looks at this stage very happy, even though she hasn't addressed any issues.
Okay. So, in my opinion, this is a very metaphorical episode, right? It's all about these like symbols of death and rebirth. So, I'm going to go through each one and tell them what the advice would be. So, for Charlotte, I would say you got to stop falling in love with potential. Okay. If a man is crying over his dead wife and you just met him, like you're not the main character. You're just the plot twist. And you deserve someone who's fully present, right? At the end of the day, if he's acting and pretending and theatrical, there's a problem here. So the lilies, I mean, I was just like not really into that last bit. She should have seen way before this guy was a huge red flag. So stop falling in love with potential. And then to Miranda, I would say, like, buying your apartment alone is not a death sentence, right? And you actually face your biggest fear of being alone. So don't let anyone make you feel small for that, because you don't know what tomorrow can bring, but today you are focusing on financial independence. So you're probably not going to die alone and get eaten by your cat, right? What you're building now is the foundation for a full life.
Yeah.
And then for Samantha, I'm like kind of mad at Samantha in this episode. So I would tell her, like, you don't need to seduce people to be seen. Like, your value is not your sexuality. Your value is not how sexy and attractive you are. It's time to look within yourself and to get to know yourself and to deeply love yourself, right? Keep your power when you're trying to fundraise. Let them impress you. Like, you do not need to trade your kisses or your, sexual encounters for this cause, for money. Like, you should have a little more confidence and self-worth.
Yeah.
And
What
then
about
to Carrie, I would say that like bravery isn't always about staying. And sometimes walking away from something you want because your gut is saying it's not right yet, that is full protection of your heart. So I would say I was really proud of you when you didn't fall back into old patterns, because that is growth. And if you're an adult, okay? So if you're accepting the fact that you might get knocked down again by sleeping with Big and by getting back into that relationship, fine. But I want you to know that it'll be harder this time to get back up. So play the game, but only if you're willing to do it on your own terms, right? It's time, Carrie, to step into your power and make the rules of the game the way you want them to be. Please do not fall into that same dynamic again and get walked all over, because it's going to hurt even more this time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my overall, I think this episode is all about, they talk about I think the title is For Women in a Funeral.
Yeah.
But I think the title should actually have the word rebirth in it, right? Because each character in this episode had to lose something in order to come back to life. So
Great
whether that was
observation.
illusion or control or fear, they each lost something to come back to life.
Yeah.
And the real love story that we have in life is really just the one with ourselves.
Great way to end the episode.
Yeah, that's my belief.
All right, Vana. And last but not least, because I know you've been busy creating more things. You've launched a book since you were last here. You also have launched a podcast. I would love for you to talk a bit more about these two projects and anything else that you want to plug in.
Totally. So first of all, thank you for having me. I love Sex and the City. I'm one of these people who's watched each episode multiple times. And I always find that when I'm in my calmest moments, it's all I want to do is watch Sex and the City. So for some reason these episode analyses just feel so spot on for me. So I'm just creating. So I'm always interested in hearing people's love stories and hearing people tell me how they met, and in people telling me their stories. Right now, that's actually what I've been focused on. I've been focusing on compiling people's stories and really understanding their love journey today. Dating in 2025 is different than dating in 2012.
Yeah.
We've seen a huge shift in people's mentalities and social media and how we relate to each other. So if you ask me what's my ask, what am I asking the listeners, it would be share with me. Follow me on Instagram at Vana Christina, VANA_Christina, which will be in the notes, and tell me how you met your person. Talk to me about what you're thinking about. Ask me any questions you have about love, because that's what I'm looking for right now. I'm really looking for real life stories, and I want to learn from you. I want to learn from people's experience today in 2025, and I want to support.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You're going to have a lot of work, I think.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. I hope you have a beautiful day. Thank you so much for coming back on. Can't wait to do it again.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.